The drop ship sliced through the sulfur-yellow cloud of Threxen V, its hull trembling with turbulence as it descended into the war zone below. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension, though it had little to do with the battle awaiting them. The Galactic Alliance fire team sat in silence, eyes flicking occasionally to humans seated in the far corner. Captain Alara Voss, a sniper from Earth. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She didn't even blink at their sideways glances. Her eyes were steady, slate gray, scanning her surroundings like she was already calculating trajectories, escape routes, and kill zones. The others weren't subtle about their contempt. A Zavar officer leaned over to his Dokari companion and whispered in that guttural, clicking dialect of theirs, deliberately just loud enough for Alara to hear. Should have sent a drone. Would be cheaper and probably smarter. A low chuckle followed from a Velnari tech. Slender, translucent skin, and proud beyond reason. Humans still rely on eyes and fingers. How quaint. Alara didn't react. Her rifle, an old Terran bolt-action modified with alien alloys and wrapped in dull gray cloth, rested against her leg like a sleeping predator. She reached down and adjusted the scope, not because it needed it, but because it gave her something to do with her hands. The metal was cool under her touch, familiar, reliable. The ship jerked as it landed, ramp lowering with a hiss of steam. A wave of sulphurous air flooded the cabin, thick with rotten static. The squad filed out, their boots clanging against a metallic ramp, exosuits hissing and adjusting. Alara stepped off last. Threxen V had been marked for strategic occupation, rich in minerals and energy nodes, but crawling with resistance from a native called Rothi, a nocturnal species of predatory tacticians. The fire team's mission was simple: recon the northern basin, establish a forward base, and eliminate any hostiles. As they advanced through the jagged terrain, Alara noticed the others immediately falling into bad habits. Too loud, too clustered, too reliant on sensor feeds and HUD overlays. She broke formation, moving silently up a rocky ridge to gain elevation. The Zavar commander, Captain Draz, noticed. "Hey, Primitive," he called through comms, voice dripping sarcasm. "You lost and just feeling nostalgic for caves?" "Covering your flank," she said flatly. A scoff crackled back, followed by silence. She adjusted her scope and watched the team descend into a narrow gulch below. Bad positioning, too many blind corners, no overwatch. It was almost a relief when the first shot came. A shriek split the air as one of the Dokari, massive and armored, took a plasma bolt to the chest and collapsed with a wet thud. Chaos erupted instantly. The squad scrambled, shouting orders, tripping over themselves in a panic. Another shot rang out, this one from above. A Kalrathi sniper perched in a tree-like outgrowth, hidden under native moss. Alara's rifle cracked once. The Kalrathi dropped. Who fired? Draz demanded, ducking behind a rock. Sniper support, Alara answered. You weren't authorized to engage. I saved your life. Silence again, this time not from arrogance, but embarrassment. She descended quietly, boots leaving barely a trace, and reached the squad as they dragged the wounded Dokari into cover. The Velnari tech stared at her, stunned. That was 1,000 meters. Through foliage. No lock-on. How? Gravity. Wind. Patience, she replied. Draz didn't thank her. He didn't even look at her. Instead, he barked orders to regroup and move north, choosing a wider path this time, one with more visibility. But Alara noticed the way his eyes occasionally darted to her rifle, the way his pace adjusted to match hers. They camped that night near a ruined alien outpost, long since overgrown and abandoned. The automated perimeter drones whirred softly, sweeping arcs of red light across the ground. Alara sat apart from the others, rifle in her lap, eyes scanning the dark horizon. You're quiet, said a voice. It was a Velnari, approaching cautiously, arms behind his back. Alara didn't look up. So are you? He hesitated, then sat down a few meters away, as if proximity might grant him some secret knowledge. You're not like the others we've met. Human soldiers, we don't send the loud ones on recon, she said. He laughed softly. Fair. Still, your gear's outdated. Your tech primitive. But you made that shot. That was not luck. No. A pause stretched between them. Then in a quieter tone, he asked, "What's it like on Earth?" Really? Ilara finally turned to him. Her face softened for a moment, memory flickering behind her eyes. "Hard," she said. "We don't grow up in academies. We don't get pampered by AI and war simulations. We learn by surviving, and surviving well enough to fight back." He opened his mouth to reply, but a sudden shriek in the distance cut him off. Everyone froze. The shriek came again, inhuman, bone deep, too close. Draz's voice snapped through comms. "Positions. Movement east." Ilara was already standing, scope up, in the distance. Faint figures moved in the shadows. Too fast, too low to the ground to be friendly. "Kilrathi," she said. "Too soon for another wave," Draz replied, tension rising. "We need air support. Won't get through the storm." She marked the lead target, adjusted her aim slightly left to account for drift, and squeezed. One shot. One kill. Another emerged. She dropped him too. The third hesitated just a second too long, and she took that one as well. By the time the others returned fire, the threat had already been halved. When the skirmish ended and the silence settled again, no one laughed. Draz approached, his helmet off now, face grim and calculating. He looked at her rifle, then at her. "Where did you train?" he asked. "Earth," she said simply. He nodded once. Not quite approval, but something shifted in his gaze. Recognition, perhaps. As the squad began securing the perimeter and tending to their wounded, Ilara returned to her post, gaze unwavering. The night was far from over, and they were finally beginning to understand why humanity had survived everything the galaxy threw at it. Not because of superior weapons or numbers, because when the stars turn hostile, it's the predator in the shadows that survives. And tonight, that predator had gray eyes and a rifle that never missed. Rain fell sideways the next morning, blown hard by gale-force winds that howled across the basin. The sky above Threxen V boiled with violet lightning, making the atmosphere crackle and flicker. Visibility dropped. Sensor arrays stuttered, and communications buzzed with static. It was, by all accounts, the worst possible time to move forward. But they had no choice. Their orders had changed overnight. Satellite scans, brief and fragmented, had caught signs of a Kilrathi stronghold hidden deep in the canyons ahead. A forward team was needed to confirm and, if possible, dismantle the outpost. Captain Draz volunteered his unit, perhaps still hoping to prove the human unnecessary. Ilara Voss said nothing. She simply shouldered her rifle and moved out, the others falling into formation behind her like shadows, unsure whether to follow or flee. The terrain grew more treacherous as they advanced. Rocks slick with acidic runoff made footing precarious. The air stung with every breath. Alien flora scraped at armor joints, releasing spores that shimmered in the gloom. Despite all of it, Ilara moved with a hunter's grace, fluid, silent, exact. They reached the ridge overlooking the canyon hours later. Below, nothing moved. No life signs, no heat signatures, no radio chatter. It was too quiet. Draz scanned the valley, frowning. No sign of them. "They're there," Ilara said softly. "You see something?" "No. I feel it." The Zavar scoffed, but kept one hand near his sidearm anyway. The squad moved into the canyon, their boots making wet squelching sounds as they crossed through the muck. That was when the first device went off. A concussive charge, buried under the slime, detonated with a deep whump, throwing the Velnari tech several meters into the air. He hit the ground with a crunch, armor cracked, blood spraying through his translucent skin. "Ambush!" someone shouted. Then the Kilrathi came. They moved like smoke, cloaked in shifting light, blending into stone and shadow. Plasma fire rained down from above as the squad scrambled, firing wildly, trying to get bearings in a maze that wasn't theirs. Draz shouted orders, "Try and form a defensive ring." Another soldier screamed as a Kilrathi knife slid between his shoulder plates. Panic was taking over. And then, a shot, crisp, clean, echoing through the canyon like the ring of a coal bell. A Kilrathi fell from its perch, its camo field flickering out midair. Then another, and another. Illyra had vanished from the main group, relocated to higher ground, nestled into a crevice with her rifle braced and already firing. Her rounds were not random. They were surgical. First the snipers, then the sappers, then the one coordinating from the rear. Each kill peeled back a layer of the attack. Each pull of the trigger bought the squad another few seconds to regroup. Draz watched in stunned silence as his team, battered and half-blind, managed to form perimeter under the cover of a single human with an outdated rifle. Her voice crackled into his ear through comms, calm and precise. Left ridge, 2 cloaked, marked with infrared residue. I'll take the rear, you handle the front. He obeyed without question. By the time the last Kalrathi dropped, the canyon floor was scorched silent and soaked in blood. The air buzzed with ozone and fear. They regrouped behind a rock formation. The surviving Velnari was panting, armor scorched and leaking green fluid. Draz leaned against a boulder, staring at Illyra as she descended from her perch, her face still unreadable. He said nothing, just nodded once. 5 minutes, she said. They'll send another wave. We need high ground and crossfire arcs. Draz finally found his voice. That's command-level strategy. I've seen more battles than you've seen years, she replied. The squad moved with new urgency. No one questioned her now. No one smirked. She split the unit into 2 fire teams, placing the Lokari heavy gunner behind a collapsed transport hull, stationing the surviving Velnari atop a shattered column to feed Overwatch intel. She took the flank herself, hidden again, unseen but everywhere. The Kalrathi returned, just as predicted. But this time they didn't meet a scattered group of arrogant aliens. They met a sniper's war. Illyra's tactics were ruthless. She predicted movement before it happened, laid crossfire paths that turned ambushes into kill zones, and coordinated fire with subtle hand signals and curt commands. Draz watched in real time as her plans unfolded with terrifying precision. They held the line for hours. After the final wave withdrew, battered, broken, and limping, there was a stillness, a silence deeper than before. Draz approached her as she cleaned her rifle. "You're not standard infantry," he said. It wasn't a question. "No." He hesitated, then asked the thing that had been building in his mind since the first shot. "How did you know where they come from? How they'd move?" Her answer was quiet. "They think like predators. But humans? We were prey for most of our history. We learned how to hide, how to strike, how to win." Draz considered that, then nodded again, this time slower, more solemn. "You should lead." She didn't reply, but her eyes lifted to the horizon, toward the jagged cliffs where the last of the Kalrathi had fled. Her voice, when it came, was steady and low. "We're not done yet." And in that moment, they all understood something they hadn't before. She wasn't just a sniper. She was the war they never saw coming. The canyon was theirs now, but it didn't feel like a victory. The dead were stacked in silence behind a shattered boulder, and the wind still carried the acrid tang of plasma and charred alien blood. No cheers rose, no flags were planted. Just quiet movement and cautious glances toward the ridgeline, where danger still lingered like a predator waiting for dusk. Draz stood over a makeshift map display, etched into the dirt with a heated blade. Illyra crouched beside him, marking potential entry points to the stronghold they'd been ordered to find. It was real now, confirmed by the recovered datapad from a fallen Kalrathi tactician. Coordinates, heat maps, resource caches. Proof. "They're nesting in the cliff wall here," she said, tapping a spot with her glove finger. "Subterranean. Multiple access tunnels. If we breach from the north, we lose sight lines. South gives us range, but no cover." Draz rubbed the back of his neck, nodding. "What about a diversion?" "They're too disciplined. You split us again, we get picked off. What do you suggest?" She looked up at him, expression unreadable. "I go in first. Solo, draw them out. You circle wide with the others and hit them when they move." He stared at her, jaw clenched. "You'd be bait." "I'm a sniper," she said, rising. "It's what we do. We wait. We invite the enemy to expose themselves. Then we take everything away from them." The silence between them stretched, heavy and final. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. Illyra moved before the sun did. The climb up the southern escarpment was steep and narrow, the rock face crumbling with every step. She moved like she had a pact with gravity, never fully challenging it, only coaxing it into letting her pass. Her gear was stripped to essentials: rifle, knives, thermal suppressors. No comms, no backup. By the time she reached the upper ledge, dawn was a pale smear across the sky. The stronghold entrance was barely visible, carved into the rock like a wound. Alien glyphs glowed faintly near the opening, and the air around it shimmered with residual energy fields. She waited prone in the shadow of a jagged overhang. Time passed slowly. Her breathing slowed. Heart rate dropped. Muscles stilled. A figure emerged from the shadows below. Not Kalrathi, Velnari. Draz. He had followed, against orders, his silhouette flickering with cloak tech. Illyra's jaw clenched. She tapped her earpiece. Dead signal. The storm above must have jammed the short-range band. She gestured sharply, signaling him to retreat. He didn't move. Instead, he pointed behind her. Illyra spun, rifle raised. A Kalrathi scout stood just meters away, half-phase in a shimmer field, blade already drawn. Too close for a shot. She rolled left as the blade came down, metal shrieking as it sparked against rock. Her elbow caught the scout in the chest, and her boot sent him over the ledge before he could recover. Below, more Kalrathi were emerging, no longer hiding. They'd been waiting too, just like her. She scrambled for a new position, but they moved quickly, covering angles, cutting off escape. It was a trap within a trap, and Draz had walked into it. She saw the moment it hit him. Plasma seared across his shoulder as he tried to flank. He collapsed behind a spire of rock, clutching the wound. Blood steamed on the stones. Illyra shifted, snapped her rifle to her shoulder, and fired. One down. She chambered another round. Fired again. Missed. Fired again. A direct hit. Center mass. They weren't scattering like before. They were adapting. She dropped low and sprinted along the ridge, changing angles, leading the Kalrathi toward the valley mouth. Toward the kill zone she'd mapped hours ago. They followed. 3. No, 4. Agile. Coordinated. She reached a marked rock and slid into place just as Draz crawled into view, gasping and bleeding. "They're coming," he managed. "I know." She braced the rifle. The first Kalrathi rounded the bend, an elite, armor etched in command sigils. Her shot hit him between the eyes. He dropped like a stone. The others hesitated. A moment was all she needed. She pulled the second trigger, a detonation charge buried in the canyon floor. The blast shook the ground, throwing the last two attackers into the air, limbs tangled. When the dust settled, she exhaled and rose. Draz was coughing, trying to stand. "You disobeyed orders," she said coldly. "I thought you'd need cover. I needed you alive, not heroic." Despite the scolding, she pulled him to his feet and helped him back down the ridge. By the time they returned to the squad, the mood had shifted again. No one looked at Illyra like a relic now. No sideways glances. No jokes. Just respect. Forged to the kind of understanding only blood and fire create. Draz's wound was stabilized. The Velnari laid out new infiltration routes. The Volcari loaded ammo packs with reverent efficiency. No one asked who would lead the assault into the stronghold. They already knew. Illyra sat at the edge of the camp, rifle across her knees, eyes on the dark wound in the mountains ahead. She had exposed the enemy. Now she would finish the hunt. The descent into the stronghold began without ceremony. No war cries, no speeches. Only cold preparation and silent resolve. Illyra led the way, her rifle slung across her back and a sidearm drawn, ready for close-quarters combat. Behind her, the squad moved like shadows stitched to her pace. Each member alert, each footfall deliberate. The tunnel was narrow at first, cut jaggedly into the rock. Bioluminescent moss clung to the walls, casting a ghostly blue glow that made skin appear pale and veins more pronounced. The further they moved in, the colder it grew. not just in temperature, but in spirit. It felt like walking into a tomb where the corpses still breathed. Ilara stopped at the first junction and crouched. A faint hum vibrated through the floor. Machinery, alive and alert. She motioned for the squad to split, two taking the left fork while she led the rest down the right. It was a path marked on the Kalrathi commander's datapad, the one they didn't expect anyone to read. Draz, now bandaged and pale, followed just behind her. He moved slower, but his weapon was steady, his eyes sharper than ever. Ilara didn't speak. There was no need. He understood now, not just her tactics, but her intent, why she fought, and why she had to see this through to the end. The corridor widened suddenly into a chamber the size of a dropship hangar. Alien conduits pulsed in the walls, feeding into a crystalline core suspended in the center like a frozen heart. Around it stood Kalrathi soldiers in ritual armor, unmoving, as though waiting for a sign. They had reached the command node. One of them turned, sensing movement. A low, inhuman sound echoed across the chamber, part challenge, part warning. Ilara raised her rifle. Now! Gunfire exploded in the cavern. The Thokeri's heavy rounds thundered, shattering armor. Plasma bolts ricocheted off cover. The Kalrathi retaliated with savage precision, flanking fast and using the terrain to their advantage. It was brutal, sudden, and close. Ilara moved with lethal grace, her sidearm barking twice, 3 times, each shot claiming a target. When the ammo ran dry, she switched to her knife, flowing between enemies like a wraith. Across the chamber, Draz was pinned behind a slab of alien steel, bleeding again but still firing. The Velnari tech tried to overload the crystal core, working through searing feedback and sparks dancing across the skin. The others held the line, each second a test of resolve. But it wasn't enough. More Kalrathi poured in, reinforcements, alerted by the breach. The squad was being overrun. Ilara didn't retreat. She climbed the core itself, bracing against the glowing supports. At the top, she pulled her last charge from her belt, an old Earth-made fusion explosive, illegal in most systems. She activated it and slammed it into the crystal surface. The Kalrathi saw her too late. She leapt, rolled, and shouted into the comm, "Fall back! Now!" Draz grabbed the wounded and ran, dragging one of the Thokeri by the arm. The chamber erupted behind them in a detonation so violent it warped the metal itself. A heat wave surged through the tunnel, knocking them down and sealing the way behind with molten stone. Silence. Dust settled, and out of it, Ilara emerged, singed, bleeding, but alive. Her armor was cracked, her rifle gone, but her eyes, those unshaken, hawk-sharp eyes, still burned with the will to finish what she started. They stumbled out of the stronghold together, into the dim sunlight of Threxen V. The storm had passed. The sky was streaked with ash and gold, the horizon quiet. Draz sat down hard on a rock, exhaling for the first time in hours. "It's done," he said, voice raw. Ilara didn't respond immediately. She stood, looking back at the mountain, at the buried war machine now reduced to rubble. "They won't forget this," she said. "Neither will we." The surviving squad gathered around her. There were no medals waiting, no parades, but something far older and more enduring settled into the air. Respect born from war, not just for her skill, but for her clarity, her unwillingness to be anything but what she was, a weapon honed by loss and necessity. "You didn't just take them down," Draz said after a long pause. "You made them fear you." "I didn't come here to be feared," she said quietly. "I came here because they laughed." He looked at her, and for the first time, truly understood the depth behind those words. The mission was over, but the legend had just begun.